The rope burned under his palm in a familiar way, the roughness of twisted hemp catching against the old scars that had once been fingers. Davos Seaworth tightened the line off on a cleat without looking at his hands, the knot made by habit more than thought, and listened to the breath of the harbor. King's Landing had always breathed like a congested beast, wheezing in tides of noise, winch squeals and the groan of hull against quay, the squabbling of gulls, the shouted trades and curses, the endless talk. Now it sighed under a weight of quiet that was not silence but something thinner, stretched too far. Even the gulls seemed less insistent, as if they too had learned caution. His ship sat low in the water, her belly half full of stone ballast and timber planks that would be pried up to make room for sacks yet to come. She was not the Black Betha, and Davos was glad for it. The Betha had gone down in green fire and nightmare, carrying sons and friends into a black throat that had swallowed them without chewing. He had no wish to stand on a ghost. The woman who had sold him this ship had called her kindly. The name had caught him in the chest on a day when he had little kindness in him. He paced along the deck, testing with his weight the caulking between the deck planks, eyeing the seams along the prow where a new length of oak had been spliced into old riggings with patched sections thinned by salt, a mast ring that wanted replacing. The work of mending was honest, if endless. It soothed him in a way that the great halls never did. Lord Davos. Men called him now, and he did not argue with them. But wood and rope and tide were more conversational to him than counsels. "Captain," said a voice from the gangplank, cheerful in defiance of the morning. He knew it without turning. Ilya with the quick feet and quicker mouth, a woman light as a swallow and twice as difficult to catch. She wore a cap squashed low to her eyebrows, dark hair tucked under it, a length of green ribbon pinned as a badge near her shoulder. Everything about her looked shrewd and practical. The ribbon was vanity, which made it precious. "They're ready for you at the Quay House. Dockmaster says if you don't bring him your ledger, he'll billet his grandmother in your forepeak." Davos sighed. "Tell the dockmaster to keep his grandmother warm. I'm not likely to carry her either." "He said you'd say that," Ilya told him with satisfaction. "Dockmaster Eustace is a prophet. He says also that if we expect to load today, we'd better present a manifest to the watch by noon unless we like spears poked into our bundles." He moved to her side and together they stood at the rail. The harbor lay like dull pewter under a low sky that might harden into rain by nightfall. There were fewer masts than there should have been. Fewer flags. Those that were there hung as if tired. The river smoothed itself around charred pilings. You could still see the stumps where whole quays had been yanked out like rotten teeth in the last weeks, splinters like jagged gums above the waterline. The bell of the sept on the hill rang once, twice, thin as a spoon knocking against a jar. Somewhere a cart will squealed until the squeal turned into a scraping cry and stopped. "I'll go to Eustace," Davos said. "You and Cobb see to the casks. I want the pitch sealed right, and I want clean bundles for the grain. Repeat it to the lads till they can say it in their sleep." "They'll be saying other things in their sleep," Ilya replied, "but I'll add it to their education." He left the rail and crossed the gangplank to the quay, paused to let a scrawny boy dart past with a basket of shriveled onions, then nodded to the pair of gold cloaks who stood with the slouch of men too tired to keep their shoulders squared. The watch's tunics looked mended as carefully as his sails. One of the men peered into a half-barrel holding coils of rope and spared Davos a suspicion that did not have the strength to turn into action. "You'll have my papers," Davos told him before the man could ask. The gold cloak grunted, counted as a kind of welcome. The Quay House had old limestone steps worn to curves that remembered every foot that had ever gone to sea. Davos went up them and into a space smelling of salt-soaked ledger boards, wax, and the peculiar stale breath of rooms that hold the affairs of too many men. Dockmaster Eustace had a beard kept short and square, and a belly that suggested those short few months when the river trade had been good had not been wasted on him. His eyes were small and appraising, and he had a scar that cut one ear into two thin lobes. The room had a window that did not open and a table under it spread with accounts. 3 other men leaned in different corners as if they had been poured there and left to dry. "Seaworth," said Eustace. "There's a tide." "There always is," Davos said mildly, and set down the small brass weight of his seal on the table in front of him with a soft click. Eustace's eyes went to it. Kindly, is it? That's a fool's name for a ship. They'll fool you, ships. Think they're pretty and they'll drown you out of sheer spite when your back's turned. Bring you silver and they'll shake it loose from your pockets in the next storm and feed it to fish. Men are not much better, Davos said. I've known both. You bring men to my quays, the dockmaster said, mock mournful. Or lumber, or stone, third-rate rope, first-rate complaints. He pushed a paper toward Davos. This is how we do it now, Lord. If you prefer the old ways, I recommend you turn time around with that seal ring. Davos felt the small caution in Eustace's use of Lord and let it pass. He skimmed the page. The city had learned new hunger in recent months and it had learned new rules with it. The rules were written with good intentions and too little practical ink. Davos had the patience to translate. The manifest would say that kindly took on sacks of oats and barley. Why measured in the quay house, sealed with the city's lead, destined to be carried to a list of towns whose names now sat in his head like beads. Duskendale, Maidenpool, Crackclaw settlements no one ever wrote on maps. Gulltown and the villages that hung about its skirts, Sisterton, White Harbor if the winds and the gods proved mild. If you mean to make a fleet of this, Eustace said as Davos wrote, you had better bring ropes enough to tie the tide itself or it will drag you wherever it pleases. I know the tide, Davos said, and it knows me. Men have said that to me, Eustace replied. I've buried or burned most of them. Davos did not look up. He signed. He pressed the seal into warm wax. The impression came out clean. A ship under stars, waves rolling. A practical thing and not a noble one. He spoke without lifting his head. There are hungry bellies in the street of silver where no silver has been seen in 2 moons. Hungry bellies near the Dragon Pit and in Flea Bottom, and all through the riverlands and the shoreline where the winter went harder than usual and the war went hardest of all. I'm not making a fleet of it because I like boats, Eustace. I'm doing it because if the little ones die now, there will be few left to mend what we've broken. I became a lord by accident. I was a smuggler by necessity. I remember what it is to look at your children and count how many crusts it takes to last to a promised tomorrow. Eustace stood very still for the space of 3 heartbeats. The other men remained where they leaned. In an empty city, no space was wasted. Silence gathered in any corners not occupied by human noise. You'll have what you need from me, the dockmaster said finally, and I'll send word to the other quays. You tell that council of yours that they do well to keep their hands light on the scales. Do you hear? I'll tell them, Davos said. Will they listen? He raised his eyes then and let Eustace see the wear in them and the stubbornness that grew at the base of his skull like a knot in a rope that others had tried to untie and failed. Some will, he said. 1 or 2 may even do more. It is enough to start. When he came back down the steps, the boy with the onion basket sat on the bottom one, onion skins clinging to his trousers like fish scales. He was probably 12, but his face had made some separate arrangement with years. He stared at Davos's hand as if the shortness of fingers might prove contagious. You're the one who brought onions to a castle, the boy said without introduction. My father says that was you. Your father tells tales, Davos said, but it's a true tale for once. The boy considered. If I gave you an onion, he said carefully, would you bring me a loaf of bread when you come back from wherever you go? What's your name? Davos asked. Timur, he said. My father's dead. My mother sells onions. My little sister eats them. She says they are apples when she eats them so she doesn't feel like crying. Is she clever? Davos asked. Yes, Timur said, fiercely protective even in the single word. Clever as a beetle and twice as quick. Do you have a ship? I have 3, Davos said. Kindly, Beetle, and Wake. He had renamed a prize of a small Nar beetle the day he took it from a freebooter who had no more use for ship names. Which one do you like? Beetle, Timur said, as Davos had known he would. Beetles always bring bread to the ants. That's what my mother says. Your mother is a philosopher, Davos told him solemnly. He took 1 onion out of the basket and felt its weight. Small, firm, a good onion. He put it back. He slipped a copper into the boy's hand. "We'll bring what we can. You wait near the docks when the fleet comes in again. I'll keep an eye for a boy with onion skins on his knees." "You can't know which boy will have skins," Timur objected. "I'll know," Davos said, and he would. He had spent too much of his life trying to judge the small measure of men by the tilt of their heads or the posture of their hope. The boy ducked away, clattered up to his feet, and vanished into the alley that smelled of tide and stew and the sweet rot of fruit left too long on a windowsill. By afternoon, the ships were stacked with barrels and bundles that were not grain but would let grain sit safe without rotting. Tar warm and liquid enough to smear into seams, cordage new spun and old, bundles of reed mats, skeins of twine for sack repairs, wood for patches and for cook fires on deck, a half-dozen chickens because men without eggs grew sour, and that had a way of curdling into fights. Cobb, who had sailed half the world and half of those miles with a drink in him, had a voice like a cracked bell and a cunning knack for coaxing two tight bundles into the space of one. He stood on the quay bellowing and sweating with purpose and joy. Davos issued small orders and larger ones without raising his voice, handed the littlest tasks to the greenest boys so they could carry a sense of ownership onto the tide, and replanned in his head with every delay the way a man fiddles with a knot. He watched a series of small tragedies play out. One barrel slipping from a rope and cracking open to bleed pitch, a bundle dropped into dirty water, an argument over the tally marks on a cask that had to do with pride rather than count. He watched also the small wins, a sailor's hand steadying a stranger without being asked, a joke that ran along the planking and lightened every shoulder for the length of a breath, Ilya tying a rigging not so quick it looked like magic and then showing a sullen lad how to do it twice and not calling him names when he did it wrong. By the time the evening put a bruise purple at the edges of the sky and lit a coin slice of pale moon, the masts of the three ships etched black against it looked less hesitant. He sent men to their hammocks with bellies full of meat stew and shared a small cup of watered wine with Ilya and Cobb on the quarterdeck. The city made its noises below them, but it did not reach for them. For a brief span of heartbeats, the harbor was theirs and the tide was a creature that would carry them if they were light-footed and remembered to speak to it with respect. "You should sleep, Captain," Ilya told him. "You wear your thoughts like you would wear a helm if you had one." He touched his head in a small mimicry of that weight. "I never liked helms," he said. "They narrow your view." "Then go without one," she said. "But at least lie down." "I'll sleep after I write," he said. He had learned to write late enough that the motion of it still held a small wonder. He went to his cabin, lit the lamp, and set the paper on the small table nailed to the floor. He dipped pen and thought of how to address a council that did not like him describing truths it preferred as rumors. He thought of the names he would put down and the needs and the promises he would make to bind men who wanted to do good to the means to do it. "My lords and ladies," he wrote, and thought of the boy with the onion skins on his knees. He crossed out the formality and started again. "Friends," he wrote, and let it stand. "We can make a chain of bread through the harbors," he wrote. "We can string it from here to the north and along the crags of the Vale and back again to the islands and the river mouths. We will not do it with a single great ship bound to a timetable that breaks at the first storm. We will do it with small ships enough to make a pattern no knife can cut through all at once. Women and men who know these tides better than they know the faces of the men who sit in their halls will do it, and they will do it because we ask them and pay them and protect them, and because they remember hungry children." He listed the ships that had already come to his whistle and wrote small notes beside each, not all of them about tonnage. He noted courage more than once, stubbornness, honesty. He wrote down Ilya's name and added, without thinking, "Quick mind, quicker hands." Cobb's name and Old Salt, who will not stray so long as he can cuss at a man he likes. A sisterman sloop called Cradler because its captain swore the sea did not rock the babe asleep as well as his hull did. A squat Manderley cog green as summer ponds. A battered longship whose iron-born master had sworn by his drowned god he would haul sacks like a mule if it meant buying salt for his clan at a fair weight. As he wrote, they gathered in his mind and the fleet made of patchwork and vows took on shape, like a net that might hold a shoal if every knot held. He finished with ink dust under his shortened nails and the lamp sweating a tiny halo onto the cabin's beams. He sealed the letter with the weight of his modest seal and sat for a while with his eyes closed but his mind not asleep. When he finally stretched out on the narrow bunk, he dreamed of nothing he could remember and counted it a mercy. They slid from the harbor on a finger-soft dawn that smelled of wood smoke and damp wool. The wind was a shy girl on the first hour. The oars took the ships to meet what breeze there was beyond the breakwater. The city gave them a fractured farewell, the way a dog does not lift its head when you leave the room but shifts, and you know it heard you go. Davos stood near the helm, one hand on the rail, and counted off the orders in a sequence that felt as if someone had recited it to him within his bones long before he was born. Raise starboard for course. Trim the mizzen. Keep a conspirator's eye on the sky's thin blue line where Fat Cloud lurked a day off. He knew the sea could turn a man to salt as surely as an old god. Knew the sea could smile and break you in the same hour. He did not mind the thought. It made him precise. 3 gulls to port waiting to see us drown, Cobb observed. They'll be disappointed, Davos said. He breathed deeply and tasted the memory of onions on his tongue as if Timur's basket had been made of air that morning. He thought of the way a city's hunger rang like a bell inside its ribcage. He thought of how the river was a door, and every tide a messenger, and every rope a word. They hugged the coast north because Davos trusted coasts, even mathematical as a chart as a seaman might be. A coast told you truths in its shape if you had time to look. It told you where men had lived long enough to give it names and where men avoided because the rocks were cruel and the wind made mischief. The cliffs north of King's Landing were a row of teeth made more gray by the kind of winter that wrote itself in scars on trees and in shorter afternoons. Here and there a village came down to touch the water with a quay like a careful toe. They did not stop. There was no point stopping to buy fish where fish had already been eaten. Fog found them in the second day, not heavy enough to blind a man outright but thick enough that a ship might bump her sister and not know whose shoulder she had nudged. He had a boy stand near the prow with a bell and a rope, not to warn but to soothe. A ship liked to hear herself. The fog made the world intimate. The sea tossed them small worries but no great ones, and Davos felt the ache in his missing fingers more than he had in months, as if the air drew nerves like wire out of old wounds. Toward dusk, the fog thinned and broke, not in tatters but in a long silent folding, and as it did, a darker mass grew from it like a thought that had finally found its words. At first he thought it was a great log. Then he saw the square end of a broken mast and the poor, desperate angle of a torn sail tangled around it. A hull then, piece of one. The midship had gone down or broken off. This was a ragged half-ship, the tide shoving it lazy as a drunk into their path. Helm, Davos said, and the helm answered without need. The ship leaned obediently, sweet-minded as a gelding. Cobb, we'll see if that thing has any to bury, or to feed, Ilya added. They came alongside careful enough to make a woman think it had been choreographed on a tavern table with cups and coins. Davos could see, in the recesses of the broken deck, slumped in the darkness, the shapes of barrels and the gray heap of something that had once been sails and was now rot and tatters. A gull sat on the edge as if it had bought the vessel at auction and would be damned if it would let interlopers touch its property. We'll board, Ilya said, judge's voice, unless you've become a man to appeal to gods first in your old age. Board, Davos said. He did not appeal to gods. If they wished to be appealed to, they could sing louder. He took 2 men and Ilya took 2 others, and they crossed on a line like acrobats no one would pay to watch, because the only audience was the sea and it was not easily impressed. The broken ship's deck slid underfoot in a sly way that good decks did not. Davos planted his feet and moved without haste. Haste made you think you were faster than the water. The first body they found sat up in the corner and made a small noise that could have been a gull's or a child's. It was an old man, his beard stiff with salt, his eyes the milky blue of men who had once seen too much sun and now saw too much haze. Ilya crouched before him and put a skin to his lips, and he drank as if his throat had learned to protest at every swallow, but his stomach had taken command and bullied the rest of him into obedience. Who else? Davos asked. The old man's tongue moved like a slug across a stone. Gone. he said in a voice that had been stripped of everything but the word. All gone. Ship, Davos said. Name. He made his own name visible by the way his body stood, by the ship across the way, by the rope at his shoulder and the steadiness of his stance. Men had to be pointed at the present. Willow and Wren, the old man said after a while. Out of Maidenpool, salted fish, good in winter, good in Lent, good in rain, good in anger. For a brief instant a different man breathed through him. One who had been made of jokes and wanted everyone to laugh because he had loved the sound so much it had filled his lungs like air. He stared at Davos's hand. Fingers, he observed. Women take them from you? The sea, Davos said lightly. She doesn't like me counting. Sea doesn't like anything that isn't hers. The old man drank again and nodded as though the water proved something he had once wanted proven. There was a girl, he said. Not like you or me. A girl with a tooth missing in the front and hair like rope. She coughed till the cough took her. There was a boy too. The boy wanted to die, but the sea wanted him first. So she took him. He blinked. What do you want with an old man? Bread, Ilya said, matter of fact. We want your knowledge for bread. Bread, he repeated, and there seemed to be a field of it before him in his mind, gold and vast. When I was a boy, I went a week on ale because the man I sailed with said it was better than bread for belly and better for courage and better for dreams. He died when he fell asleep and rolled into the water. Went down like an anchor and never woke. He pushed the skin away. I have eaten enough. I have eaten enough of nothing. Take me off this. Put me on your boat and I'll tell you where the shoals are and where the fog lies in wait. I'm not done with the counting of days yet. We'll take you, Davos said. They put a blanket around him and called across for a sling. He went up like a saint in a carving, lifted to a niche and smiled as if the wind had finally said something sensible. They found 2 more bodies who were past bread. Davos said a few words to no one in particular while the gull on the rail cocked its head as if to listen. When they went back to Kindly, the old man sat at the foot of the mast sucking the marrow out of a piece of bread softened in stew, eyes closing between swallows like a man listening to music. What's your name? Ilya asked him. Gal though, he said. Once they called me Gal because I laughed a lot and then they called me though because I didn't. Now I'm Gal though again. The sea changes names because it likes to. Gal though, Davos said. You're signed on till we put into port. After that, if your legs remember streets, you can keep your berth or take your leave. Streets are full of ghosts, Galtho said, and a shadow passed very lightly over his face, the way a cloud passes quickly over afternoon grass when the wind is playful. Boats are full of ghosts too, but they rhyme with my bones better. They came into Gulltown under a sky that had decided to be clear as a truth told by a man with nothing left to save. The Vale's walls rose behind the town in courteous folds of rock and green, and the town's harbor made a clean approximation of busy without admitting to it fully. It had not suffered as hard as some places, but it wore an air of breath held, waiting. The harbor master, there was a woman who wore her authority like a wrist knife, very visible and not meant for threat. She had once been pretty in a way that made men sloppy. Now she was handsome in a way that made men shut their mouths. Her name was Isane, and she listened with her head titled half a degree, careful as any schoolteacher. You want sacks, she said. You want oats. You want barley. You want men who will lift, and you want girls who will mend. And in exchange you have what, Lord? Coin, Davos said. Not as much as you would like. Promises. Not as thin as you may fear. And protection if any man or ship tries to take what you have. We do not look for danger, but we will not put our backs to it if it finds us. I yet remember being told that Lord's promises can be cast to pigs, Isane replied. And I remember when pigs were worth more than words. They still are, Davos said. Never bet on words over pigs unless your words are very heavy indeed. We'll pay coin for WH. At we can carry now and for what we can leave in bond till we pivot back along this coast. If you'll have it. And you'll keep my workers safe while they load? She asked, too casually. From what? Davos asked. She flashed a look sharp as a surprised knife. Then she said, From men who come by night and say oats have better uses than being shipped south to people they've never met. From men who call themselves brothers of no religion and have knives regardless. From boys with sticks who haven't been fed and think that gives them right to choose who starves next and who doesn't. We'll have men on the docks at night, Davos said. We'll sleep light. I'll tell stories of what happens to men who put knives on women's throats while they were hired to fill sacks. Stories? She asked archly. Stories, he said. And if you need something more than stories, we have arms. And some of us know how to use them without pretending to be soldiers. She looked at his hand with its shortened complement of fingers and then at his eyes. You're honest because you're too tired not to be, she said. It passes for wisdom. All right, we have oats. Not as much barley. No horses to spare. A great many sacks that need mending. We have men who can lift and women who can curse at them till they lift faster. We have 4 boats that can be sent east to the sisters and north if you have coin for fish. We have men who will swear to protect you if we feed them for the swearing, but I suggest you bring your own. We have small children who like to put river stones into sacks for the joy of seeing them swell up when grains are poured around them. They will steal from you laughing if you turn your head. You'll catch them and you'll laugh with them. You do this right and you'll leave this harbor with a cargo that would make kings nod and pretend they thought of it first. Good, Davos said simply. At night, the harbor sang with ropes creaking and was punctuated by the cluck of chickens on deck and the small sound of someone knitting on the quay. Ilya walked the length of the mooring points with 2 other sailors and a cudgel in her hand she ribbed Cobb about, saying she kept it to remind herself what he looked like. She caught 2 boys before midnight and made them fix what they had undone, which she judged punishment enough. She caught a man with desperation in his shoulders near the lightering barge and put him down with a quick knee and a quicker bark, then helped him up and told him to sit near the small fire and keep his hands where she could see them. He cried without sound and stopped as if ashamed of his own throat for betraying him. Davos slept for an hour, woke, wrote a second letter, and slept another hour. In the morning, he stood beside Isane and watched the sacks go into the hold like a kind of prayer. He counted and he weighed in his head the way a man who had smuggled long enough to know which cargoes floated light and which heavy does, and he recalculated routes the way smaller men rearrange their shoes at night. He thought of White Harbor and of men with bellies of lard and hearts of iron, whose promises were good so long as they made sense in the arithmetic of their own houses. Before he left, he went to Isane with a small cloth bundle. "What's this?" she said, suspicious out of habit. "A favor," he said, "from someone you don't know. A woman in the city gave me this to give to a woman in the Vale. She thought she was a fool to send it. I think we are all fools and we might as well put our foolishness to use." Inside the cloth was a small packet of seeds wrapped in parchment. "Leeks," Isane read. She snorted. Then she smiled, a very thin, reluctant, almost private smile. "We shall raise leeks on my sister's balcony, because a stranger in the capital believes vegetables deliver more miracles than septons." "Mind the children," Davos said. "They'll pull them up before their time if you don't teach them patience." "We'll teach them," she said. "Go. The tide will put a hand on your back either way. Better that you are already moving." They sailed east and then north again, visiting harbors like a doctor visits patients, tapping here and listening, laying down coins like poultices, taking what could be spared, promising to return, promising to send others along the coast if their own holds filled too swift. They put in at Sisterton where wind hooted around the towers like a bored choir. The sisters gave fish and salt and rough advice and took in exchange for both some ropes and some boots and a handful of books torn from a plundered monastery library that a sister man had taken not out of piety, but because he liked the pictures of animals. "They look like cats drawn by a man who had met only dogs," Ilya observed, leafing through a page that showed a lion's head arranged with extravagant mustaches. "They will delight some child," Davos said. "They will delight you," she said. "They already have," he admitted. At White Harbor, winter hung on the stone like faint frost and stubbornness. The Manderley Hall gave him a draught of ale that was thick enough to strip rust from a knife and men who spoke to him from behind the comfort of a table heavy with ledgers. The High Lord was away at some business or another, and so were his grandsons and Soidizon grandsons. Davos had learned not to ask the North for what it did not offer. He spoke to a man named Marlin who had hair as white as snow on the river and eyes that watched him as if he were a ship with a new rigging. Interesting but unproven. "We remember," Marlin said slowly, tasting the word, "when the South sent us papers with words and no bread. I remember when the North sent us words and no men," Davos said. "But I also remember the day your lord put his ships to our cause. I remember seeing a deck crowded with bearded men who looked as if they had eaten salt for breakfast, and I thought to myself, we might live a little while longer. We might live." Marlin's mouth twitched as if he had been paid 5 different compliments at once and could not count them. "We have grain," he said. "We have salt fish. We have the will to send both. We will not have our own children go without in order that strangers might eat. That is the measure of our charity. Will you call us hard men? I will call you men who know how to count," Davos said. "If you give more, I will call you foolish and try not to look relieved. We can pay coin. Not enough. We can pay with letters that will buy favor later. Not always worth as much as men like to say. We can pay with protection for your ships on the southern routes. That is worth quite a bit right now." "Whom do we fear?" Marlin asked. "I hear more names than I have fingers." "Some will fear us more," Davos said. "Those are the ones I want you to fear. Let me worry them. The more ships we string, the more eyes we have. If we're careful, if we move like a school of fish rather than a single fat whale, we will pass under the spears." Marlin grunted. "You talk like a man who has watched men throw spears at fat things before." "I have watched men throw spears at everything before," Davos said. "They're not choosy." "Then we make our bargain," Marlin said. "We send you fish. We send you a man who swears he knows a short way through the fingers if you want to cut time on a return. We give you 3 men who have mended nets longer than your sailors have breathed and can sew up the belly of your sacks blindfolded. In return, you tell me the names of the towns that say they starved while my men were loading their holds, and I will send those men to me and ask questions until the answers are good. We do our part, Lord Davos. We will not be called liars for it." "That is a fair bargain," Davos said. "Gods keep us all honest." "Gods keep their hands to themselves," Marlin muttered. "We'll keep each other honest." On the day they turned back south with holds that made kindly sit lower than Davos liked. The sky wrote thin veins of ice in the highest blue. It would snow higher up in the north yet. Down along the long body of the land, it would drizzle and then steam in the fog. He thought of the Street of Silver. He thought of Timur's sister biting onions as if they were apples. He thought of a child in Gulltown with a lion drawn like a cat in his hands, and of Isane's hands in soil, and of Ilya and Cobb walking the deck with their feet splayed for balance like old birds, and of Galtho napping with his head against a coil of rope as if listening to stories the rope remembered. The sea had grown friendlier as if bribed by fish, or perhaps they had simply fallen into the way of it again. How the forecourse must be trimmed when a wind slipped slyly along the beam. How 3 men could move a barrel better than 4 if the 3 knew each other's strengths. How food tasted when you ate it standing up and working. Davos had long believed labor sweetened most things, and he held to the belief now because he had little else to hold. He began to think beyond King's Landing, of Duskendale's old and odd pride and its sensible wives, of the way Maidenpool's walls had crumbled and risen and crumbled like a child's towers, of ports farther south where winter's bite was less sharp but folly's was deeper, of ships coming up from the arbor with wine instead of barley, and how a man might coax a quarter of their space to hold flour if he met them with the right words and the right coin. He counted in his head and slid men from ship to ship in his mind, matching temperament to hull the way any good captain does invisible arithmetic, and knew he was in danger of becoming a man who thinks he can hold the whole coast in his head and therefore begins to lose pieces of it. That night, with the sea behaving in an unusually civilized fashion and the stars showing off in a sky freshly washed, Ilya came to stand at his side with her hands tucked into her belt, a lad's posture she had not unlearned, though she had no need to pretend to any shape now. "You have the look of a man with more than one map in his head," she said. "It will make your clothes tight." "Let it," he said. Then, because she had earned more, he added, "I think of what happens when we put this food on the quays. Whether the men who say they will keep order will do it without putting their hands into the sacks. Whether the baker who gets flour today will raise his prices because he knows he can and the mothers will still have to pay. You are thinking of the building and not the voyage, Ilya said. We are made for the voyage. Others are made for the building. Find them, bring them bread and make them swear to use it properly. Offer them something they want that isn't coin. What do you think they want? Davos asked. Pride, she said without hesitation. To be seen, to be thanked without it feeling like pity. A banner to stand under that doesn't belong to men who sent their children to die. New shoes, better wives, you know, the usual. He laughed, quick and genuine, and the sound startled him like a gull that comes too close and suddenly banks. The usual, he agreed. And what do you want, Ilya? To sleep 6 hours in a row, she said. To sail a ship that isn't made of patches. To stand on a quayside and not watch every shadow. To see my brother's boy grow up fat and stupid instead of thin and clever. Maybe he will be stupid enough to make himself a priest and live to 100 and bore people in his old age with how he once sailed with a famous lord who had too many maps in his head. What do you want? To be useful till the end, Davos said. It is a small and ugly want, but it is mine, and to be forgiven for my sons. They died for a king who could not win. I took them to that water. I should have kept them by a fire with their mothers. A ship can burn in a hearth as well as at sea. You know that's not how the world is made, she said softly. Not to console him, but to be exact. I know, he said. The sea shivered under them like a horse shifting its weight from hoof to hoof, settling more comfortably into its own terrain. Knowing does not befriend my sleep. They put into King's Landing on a day that had started to believe in spring again and had been outrailed by winter's reluctance. The docks smelt of grain as if the scent had been waiting for months in a cupboard and had finally been let out and was now going to live in the corners of everything. Men moved fast and men moved slow, both kinds seeming to cause the same delays. Children collected like drift around the feet of sailors, yapping and darting and trying for jobs, for coin, for any place in the choreography. Timur appeared as if he had been standing behind the next stack of crates since the morning they left. The onion skins still claimed him. His eyes were bright with hope he had tried not to grow. He stood a little taller, the way boys do when they have taught themselves something they were not supposed to know and want to announce it without speaking. You promised, he said. A man might have thought him accusing. Davos thought him brave for pressing the words out. I did, Davos said. He handed him a small loaf that fit the boy's palm as if it had been shaped to his measures. Timur sniffed it as if its smell might be enlarged by ritual. He turned away to shout for a girl, and a girl appeared, hair tangled, face sharp and watchful, eyes too large for her face like a child drawn by someone who had never met a child. She took the bread with ceremony and bit it with both gratitude and suspicion, as if it was a trick that might vanish if she bit wrong. She swallowed and her shoulders loosened. She did not smile. She did not need to. More where that came from, Davos said to Timur, to the girl, and to no one in particular. If the gods are willing and men are unwilling to spoil it. He had no desire to make speeches on the dock, but Eustace had found a way to have 4 town men and 2 women from the small folk council in a neat half-circle and a look on his face that said he'd promised them a lord to speak. So Davos spoke. He told them where the sacks had come from, not as a list but as a line of people, and named those he could name not for their titles but for their work. He told them how long the food would last if they measured it as carefully as they salted their soup, and he told them how long it would not last if they did not. He made no promises he could not keep. He said when the next ships could be expected. He told them to report to Eustace and to a woman named Mara who had a stall under the 3rd arch of the fish market, and to whom, for reasons he did not share, thieves would find it very inconvenient to lie. When he was done, a very small girl stepped forward, solemn as a wedding, and held out a flower that had been mangled possibly by 12 hands but still looked enough like a flower for the intention to be recognizable. He tried to take it and it fell apart into petals and stem. He said, "Thank you," as if he had been given a jewel. The girl nodded, satisfied with the transaction, and went back to her mother's skirts. They unloaded, and men grumbled with purpose. And a man tried to tuck 2 sacks into a boat behind a pile of nets and discovered that his luck had not extended to finding a day when Ilya was not on the quay. She took his ear between thumb and forefinger and released it with half his shame stuck to it. He went away older by good measure. Timur stood guard by the gangplank with the seriousness of a soldier who does not realize the sword he carries is made of wood. Galdo told 2 boys stories about a ship named after birds and trees and made them laugh at a bit that wouldn't be funny to anyone else. Cobb paced and cussed lyrically, pointing out to anyone who would listen and anyone who wouldn't that men who learned to carry sacks in a straight line would find the gods easier to please and their wives kinder at night. As the sun leaned westward and shadows elongated like stretched cats, a man came to the edge of the quay with a look that had nothing to do with food and everything to do with the kind of hunger not eased by bread. He had the posture of someone who had once been obeyed and had not been obeyed for some time now. It had hollowed him out in unpleasant ways. He wore a plain cloak too new, and boots that said he had not walked far. He saw Davos and adjusted his mouth rather than his expression. "Lord," he said, and made the word sound as if it might bite him. "I have letters for you." He held up a sealed packet with 3 different seals attached to it like barnacles. "From whom?" Davos asked. "From a council that likes its advice taken and will be displeased if it is not," the man said, with the oblique courage of a man who wanted to insult someone and had found a way to do it without getting his nose broken. Davos took the packet. He turned it in his hands, weighing the weight of wax, the weight of expectation. He slid it into his sleeve. "You can drink with my men," he said, "or you can stand at the edge of the quay and try to memorize how this looks so you can tell them. Both will give you only part of the truth." "The truth?" the man said sharply, as if the word itself had pricked him. "It looks like this," Davos said and gestured. Men lifting, sweating, laughing and cussing. A sailor handing a small loaf to a woman and showing her where the line would form tomorrow morning if she came early. Ilya's quick eye breaking up a quarrel before it advanced to its second vowel. Eustace looking pleased despite himself and then catching himself looking pleased. "It smells like this. It moves like this. If you try to write it down, you'll lose the sense of it. Tell them that too." The man hesitated. "They will ask what you intend to do next." "Bring more," Davos said, and his voice was calm and stubborn and tired and full. "We bring more, and we teach men how to make their own more, and we set in place people who will keep doing it when I am back on a deck and they forget my name again." "You think they will forget?" the man asked, somewhere between insult and wonder. "Everyone's names are forgotten except the ones the bards decide to remember, and the bards have always been cheaper to bribe than a longshoreman," Davos said. "I'm not doing this to be remembered." "Then why?" Davos looked at Timur, who was pretending not to listen. He looked at the girl with the flower parts on her dress, who gnawed her bread with fierce efficiency. He looked at Galdo and at Ilya and at Cobb and at Eustace and at the harbor that had lost some of its cautious hum and found something like a broken tune reassembling itself. "Because I like the way the world sounds when children sleep with full bellies," he said. "Because I can. Because in the ledger I carry in my head, I still owe more than I can pay, and this is the only kind of coin that seems to spend." The man nodded, because there was nothing to argue with there, and went to find a cup of watered wine. Davos went back to his ship long enough to put the packet of letters on his table. He left it unopened. There would be time. He did not like the look of the wax. Too much red. Not enough blue. He went back again to the quay and the sacks and the people. He managed well past sunset to avoid anyone speaking to him of futures. When the fleet took the tide again, the harbor came awake for them, not with pomp, but with hands waving, with girls throwing pebbles at the hulls like blessings, with men shouting jokes across water. Davos stood at the stern and watched King's Landing diminish into charcoal and faded gold. Less ruin and more city than it had been when they had left it. Not enough, but some. What did the letters say? Ilya asked that night as they chased a line of moonlight like children with a ribbon. "Nothing I didn't already fear," Davos said. "Additions to the list of places to be careful. Instructions from men who think the sea is like a corridor in their palaces. Suggestions about which houses must be paid special mind. which towns are loyal, which merchants are not. Will you listen? She asked. I will listen, he said, as a courtesy, and then I will do what I think is right, as a discourtesy if need be. They will be pleased with you, she said solemnly. I have made peace, he said, with displeasing more people than I please. You have made a life of it, she corrected. It suits you. He laughed, and it was easier to do this time. The stars deliberately scattered across a sky that had grown confident again. Somewhere ahead, the sisters would be brewing storms in their teapots. Somewhere farther, a small boy would be standing in a doorway smelling warm bread and telling his sister it was apples whether it was or not. Wind came from the south next day, steady and flat, the kind sailors love except that it grows them lazy. Davos kept boys running and men honest. He let Galvo plot a foolish course on a bit of slate and then tell the boys why it was foolish, because knowing why was as important as knowing. He thought of letters, then did not. He watched the horizon for sails and found only gulls. When they came into a small cove to take on water, a girl barely in her teens stood with a bundle of rushes under her arm and an expression that made you think she had never wept and wouldn't know how. She told Davos in the clear voice of a clerk that men had taken 3 sacks off a mule cart as it came along the lower road last night, and that if Lord Davos would like to get them back, they were by the old lime pit near the turn where the road thinks about being clever and isn't. He took 4 men and went, not because the sacks would make an army of difference, but because the girl's voice had said this. I trust you to care about small things. They found the men who had hunger on them, but not the kind that leaves ribs showing. He took the sacks back with fewer blows than worse men might have used and told the men where to stand if they wanted work lifting and wages at the rate honest men got. 2 came to the dock that evening. 1 did not. It was enough. The girl accepted a loaf as if she did him the favor, and walked away chewing thoughtfully with that polite disdain only children can manage without malice. They sailed south again, and the sea turned playful and then petty and then kind and then not. They put into Duskendale under skies hammered flat by rain, and out of it under sun that made the cobbles shine. They measured weather as men measure coin, counting good days and bad and calculating how many of the latter it takes to put the former at risk. They sent 2 ships east for herring and set the rest on a line that would zig and zag until it transcribed the shape of a verb only sailors speak. On a morning when the sky had shaved itself close and the water had the texture of damp silk and the gulls had decided to find corals elsewhere, a gray sail showed itself on the horizon like a bad idea that had put on a coat. Davos saw it at the same breath as Ilya and Cobb, and all 3 of them measured it, each with their particular arithmetic. The ship was long and low and moved like a thing that liked to come near without being noticed until it could grin its teeth at your throat. Could have been a friend. Could have been a hunger with oars. Davos lifted his hand, and men who had thought themselves idle found suddenly that they remembered old drills. He had always believed in looking like a man who would not be frightened if a house fell on him. He did not know whether it worked, but it made him stand straighter. He looked at the sails, at the course, at the way the helm turned, at the seconds between small adjustments. He was speaking in a language of inches and heartbeats, and the gray ship answered him in the same. What will you do? Cobb asked, as if he had been asking Davos this question since Davos was a boy with all his fingers and a bundle of onions under his shirt. What we always do, Davos said. He smiled, and the smile made his face gentler rather than more dangerous. He let one knuckle rest on the rail. The wood was warm. The water hissed along the hull's hip as if disapproving, and then forgave them. The long, low ship came, undecided whether it preferred to behave or be interesting. It had, Davos saw now, a captain with too much ambition or too little sense. He thought of letters with red wax. He thought of sacks of barley. He thought of the boy with onion skins on his knees, and the girl with no laughter in her face chewing bread with grave concentration. He thought of the noise a city makes when it breathes easy and the way that noise dies under hard winter. He thought of the way a smuggler learns the shape of caution and how a lord forgets it, and how he, being both, refused to choose. He thought of his sons and the different sea that had taken them, and of the promise he had never said aloud to their silent bones. He said, quietly so that only Ilya and Cobb could hear, "If they come with open hands, we share bread. If they come with closed ones, we open them." Gently if they let us, less gently if they insist. Ilya nodded once. Cobb laughed under his breath and rolled his shoulders as if preparing to carry something heavy and welcome. The gray sail swelled, tilted, made up its mind a fraction of a second before men on its deck did. And the day swung toward a choice like a door set finally on its hinges.